When James Pearce was considered a number one pick overall in the NFL draft, I think we all thought that he's going to Vols. I mean, guys don't turn down being the number one pick in the NFL draft very often. I mean, Peyton Manning did, but that's not going to be the case for the most part. So with James Pearce, they lose a guy that's an elite edge rusher, supposedly, according to NFL scouts that I have talked to. He didn't have the impact on the field that I thought that he would. So let me ask you this. As far as James Pearce, let me ask you, how replaceable is he? Can the Vols replace James Pearce?
I think James Pearce is very replaceable. And I say that because I think James Pearce, as good as he is, I said this yesterday and I thought about it and I'm doubling down. I think Rodney Garner is turning Tennessee into edge rusher U in a similar, I said that. In a similar way that Lincoln Riley had turned Oklahoma into quarterback U a few years ago. I mean, John Calipari turned Kentucky into one and done U, number one draft pick U, like year in and year out. I think Rodney Garner's turning Tennessee into that. So let's back up for a minute. What happened? Josh Heupel takes over in 2021. Rodney Garner comes in. Byron Young, a junior college transfer, comes out of nowhere and becomes the best edge rusher in the SEC 2 years in a row.
He was a general manager at what was it? What's that little store that they have? Anyway, I can't remember the name of it, but he was a general manager at like a little thrift store type thing. But go ahead.
Yeah, now he's about to get a major NFL contract. There's going to be a movie on him one day, honestly, with that story. So that happens with Byron Young. He's gone. James Pearce comes in. Looks like a generational edge rusher. They start doubling James Pearce this year. Joshua Joseph starts to make an impact. Also, Tennessee got, from a raw talent perspective, the most physically gifted player at the edge rusher spot on the recruiting trail last year in Jordan Ross, who, yes, did cost the Vols a game with his roughing the punter penalty against Arkansas. I am very aware of that. But overall, I got to be honest, he is the best of all of them from a pure physical perspective. So I think Tennessee will have no problem replacing James Pearce. I think Joshua Josephs, David Hobbs are bodies, and I think Jordan Ross is the rare talent that will be the most irreplaceable edge rusher Tennessee's ever had.
Okay. Now, I think you're projecting a little bit, and we both do this. Please, if you don't mind, hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to this point, do that. We had a poll question up earlier that is, what is worse, a shoulder dislocation or the flu? It was overwhelmingly flu. We now have a new poll question up concerning James Pearce. So let's go ahead and set that up. It's on there, and I'm gonna tell Caleb why I think that he's off base here. But what's our poll question on the YouTuber?
Can the Vols replace James Pearce? Yes, no, maybe.
Okay, yes. Is doing a pretty good job, and that stuns me. Hang tight. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones.
Okay, here's the deal. I think two things are pitfalls in your argument. One, Jordan Ross, we haven't seen him hit any sort of level that would make me think he's elite. I look at him as a specimen in the eye test that can burn us so bad. I think that we've gotten excited about Jordan Ross, but at the end of the day, Jordan Ross may be as talented as James Pearce. He may even be more talented. He's a little bit bigger. But if they start dropping Jordan Ross into pass coverage, I don't, for 50% of the plays, like it seemed like with James Pearce, I don't know that Tennessee is going to be any better or worse. I think they're just hamstrung. Now, maybe they learned a lesson and they're going to have Ross come around the edge more often as opposed to dropping into pass coverage. But man, they really mishandled that. And I've got to see what they do in response to that before I'm willing to go all in that Ross is going to be as good or better than Pearce. Physically, when I look at them, I'm on board with you. I also think that James Pearce is going to go in the first round, so I'll play the numbers game. Chances are that players won't go in the first round, right? So I'll play the numbers game with you a little bit. So I disagree, but it's not because of anything that Jordan Ross has done or will do. It's because I'm not sure Tennessee knows how to use an elite edge rusher. And until they show me different, that's where I stand.
Okay, let's think about it from this perspective. And here's an interesting exercise. So we've talked at length about how Leonard Little was idiotically put at middle linebacker in 1997. Made no sense his senior year. He was a situational edge rusher. And as a situational edge rusher, I still think he had like 8 sacks or something. It was insane how well he played. He was an All-American that year. Should have been an All-American in 95, though. 97, it was a Lifetime Achievement Award for him to be an All-American. What happens in 98? Leonard Little's gone. Tennessee sticks Sean Ellison at defensive end. Sean Ellis is a little bit bigger, so they realize they can't move him around at middle linebacker. So they're forced to fully commit him to end. And Sean Ellis in 98 is probably more productive than Leonard Little was in 97. And I'm thinking this year with Jordan Ross, I think because Jordan Ross is bigger, and significantly so, I think they'll have a harder time actually dropping him back in coverage. So I think they'll kind of be forced to play Jordan Ross up on the line more. So it's kind of one of those situations where they'll be forced to use him properly, which I'm sure you've seen coaches have to do in the past, where they're forced to use a player properly. And you're like, thank God they don't have the option to make the mistake that they sometimes make.
Right. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so I think they'll be forced to play Jordan. See, they thought James Pearce, they could disguise coverages and things like that because he's so athletic. It's not like he can't drop back in coverage and make plays. You're just wasting what he could do up front. I think Jordan Ross, I don't think they can do that. I don't think Jordan Ross can do that, which means he's just going to be an edge rusher, which makes you much more excited if you're a Tennessee fan because he's going to stay on the line.
Okay, do me a favor. I'm going to look up Jordan Ross's size. Go ahead and look up James Pearce's size because Ross appears to me to be a bigger, maybe more athletic guy. 6'5", 245 pounds. How big was Pearce last year? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I said let me pull it up. I thought you were looking up Jordan Ross's size, and I thought you were looking up James Pearce's size. Pearce was listed as 6'5", 243. I'm not buying it though. I've seen them next to each other. Ross looks a lot bigger.
He does, and a lot of those numbers are made up. And listen, you're not going to create a potential problem if James Pearce comes to you and says, "I want to be listed at 245, even though I'm 228." I agree. Ross looks a lot bigger. Who else might be on this team that could be a pass rusher specifically from the edge? Do you have a feel for that? Because it would be nice for Tennessee to have two. I felt like not only did the Vols waste James Pearce on rushing him against the passer, but I felt like they kind of wasted him in that they opened up more opportunities on the other side because he got extra attention. Yet I don't think they had a player that was absolutely good to go in terms of being ready. And that's Tennessee's fault. But I don't know that they have a second high-level elite rusher. What say you?
Okay, so, and for what it's worth, Jordan Ross was 245 coming in. James Pearce was 220 coming in. So that means Jordan Ross could get it.
They're not the same size. I mean, those rosters are just goofy.
Yeah. So I'm very high on, obviously, like I told you, Jordan. We know what Joshua Joseph can do. We saw him be very effective last year. On the, kind of the bigger Tyree West style edge rusher on the other side. You talk Tyree West himself. David Hobbs is on that side. Tyree Weathersby could play that role. I believe in all of them in a rotational situation. I don't know if Dominic Bailey can come back. I don't think he can, but also don't sleep, Dave, on Emmanuel Okoye as another edge rusher. Remember, Emmanuel Okoye switched positions to edge rusher. He had to spend a year learning the system, but I think they are high on his raw athletic ability from what I've heard. And so if he actually picks up the fundamentals, let's be honest, you could tell me there's not that much coaching with playing edge rusher, right?
Well, there was last year with Pearce because he had to.
No, I mean, there's not that much development in learning how to be an edge rusher off the edge and learning how to rush the quarterback.
If that's all you do, if you're James Pearce and you're dropping into coverage as often as he did last year, then you're talking about something completely different, Caleb. Because at that point, you've got a guy that's probably overthinking things. So I don't think it's hard to teach a guy to rip and roar. I go back to something that Jeremy Pruitt said, and I know he's not the brightest bulb in the lighting shop, but he said, I don't care if they put one hand down, if they put no hands down. It's just that body lean to get around the edge. So I think that's significant in that Tennessee will make things easier for Jordan Ross if they're smart about it. If you have an elite pass rusher, he should be able just to attack the quarterback. It's the second most important position in sports. It changed the game, and Tennessee did not get what I expected that they would out of James Pearce.
You think it's the second most important position?
I do. Do you not?
An edge? I never thought. See, my thing with edge rushers is, I mean, I guess you're right. They do kind of change the game.
I mean, that's basically what Blindsided was all about. Is that movie is the fact that, and I know you've got ties in that area, but it was the fact that when Lawrence Taylor broke Joe Theismann's leg, and back then an injury like that and you're done, they actually cleaned his stuff out and put it in a box. At that point, edge rushers became a huge priority. The next priority was an offensive tackle to stop the edge rusher. So no, I mean, to me, the most important position on the field is quarterback, followed by edge rusher, defensive end, whatever you want to call it, and then offensive tackle. Those are pretty much the three that are on a separate tier. Then after that, I think, yeah, I mean, they don't have as much of an impact on the game. I'm surprised you may not agree with that. You?
No, I'm not agreeing with it. I was just kind of pondering it for a minute. But I get your point overall. You're right. Edge rushers are crucial. I still wonder if, I'm starting to wonder if with the times they dropped James Pearce back in coverage, maybe they were lower on and one of the reasons I bring this up, maybe they were lower on their safeties than we thought. I mean, part of taking away them quick slants in the middle of the field, Dave, and you know this, is making sure the nickel and the safeties are in the right positions. Well, Jordan Thomas went down with a season-ending injury at the beginning of this year. I think they were high on him. They didn't get to use him. But then on top of that, Boo Carter was raw, and as good as he was playing out of position a lot. He was just so athletic he could recover at nickel. But I think because he was raw, and I think because Jordan Thomas was hurt, I think they had to rely on Pearce to drop back in coverage some to take away those passes over the middle of the field more than they wanted to have to rely on that. Yep. And I don't think they have to rely on that next year. I think the safeties and nickel should be better next year, but I'm not sure.